Hi there. Thank you so much for listening to Grounded in Maine today. My name is Amy, and my guest today is Timothy Schramm of the Howe-Peterson Funeral Homes. And there's more to it. I'm going to have you fill it in. And I'm really excited about this because if you've listened to the podcast for a while, you know that I did an episode with Melissa Meadows. And I mentioned just recently that I talked to recent guest Holly Berry about natural organic reduction, also called NOR. Also, Timothy was saying human composting. So all the same term. I mean, if you know me, if you've listened to these podcast episodes, like I'm oddly, like morbidly fascinated by the death process. And I think it's so interesting. And I love that there are options because I did not really know until really talking to Melissa. So Tim, thank you so much for being here. Please finish the rest of the name, the Howe-Peterson Funeral Homes and
Cremation Services.
Cremation Services. Thank you so much for being here. I am really I'm so excited to learn about death. I don't know how else to say it.
It's a topic nobody wants to talk about until somebody asks a question, and then everybody wants to talk about it.
Right. And I'm in good company, right? I mean, you've been doing this for 38 years.
Yeah, I'm that old. Thanks. Keep rubbing it in.
Yo, I think we're the same age. So you've been doing this for 38 years with the same company?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And now you're the CEO, and y'all, if you listen to the name of the company, the funeral home, Howe-Peterson, none of those include Timothy or Schramm. So can you please fill us in on that?
Sure.
Because this is blows my mind. Really cool.
So I'll give you give you a grandiose introduction. So Tim Schramm, I am a licensed funeral director. I am also a spokesperson for the National Funeral Directors Association. And our funeral home, Howe-Peterson Funeral Home and Cremation Services, has been in existence since 1873. Our flagship location in the city of Dearborn is right down the street from Ford World headquarters. But yet we are actually older than Ford. So we were here first. There were 2 generations of the Howe family, 3 generations of the Peterson family, in which I worked for all 3 generations. The family appointed me as the chief operating officer. So I started as a funeral service associate, graduated from Wayne State University with my degree in Mortuary Science. I completed my national board exam, served my residency with Howe-Peterson, passed my national boards, and became a licensed funeral director. In 1994, I became a location manager of our Taylor location. It's actually the city I grew up in, and actually had worked for the city for 10 years from the time I was 14 to 24. 2005 became vice president and director of operations. 2011, the chief operating officer. And in 2015, we began an ownership transition. And I am the owner of a pretty large bank debt because that's all that I really own.
That's what I got out of it.
Right. The bank is really the one who owns everything. I just work for the bank. So I always told people for 25 years, my job was to make sure the Peterson family had everything they wanted so I could stay employed. And for the last 11 years, my job is to make sure the bank has everything they want so I can stay employed. And that's kind of, my story with Howe-Peterson. Active member of the National Funeral Directors Association. I'm currently a trustee for the Funeral Service Foundation.
Wow.
And I am a past president of the Michigan Funeral Directors Association. I was actually the first, at that time, non-owner elected as president. And at that point in time, in their 136th year, I was the first non-owner. So the Michigan Funeral Directors Association was the first funeral directors association in the United States. And it was actually the MFDA that convinced some other funeral directors from around the country to form the National Funeral Directors Association.
So it started out in Michigan? And then, wow.
In Michigan, as far as state association, and then with Michigan and some other states, they formed the National Funeral Directors Association.
That's really cool. So you started out as, I mean, you were the first president that was not an owner.
Yes. Yeah, in
And now you can't say
2014,
that.
2015. Yeah, I can, because at the time I still was the first non-owner ever
Right.
elected, right? No one can ever take that away from me.
Right. Well, I'm just saying, like, if it were to happen again, you can't say that. Well, I
I will
mean, you
never be
still.
president of the association again, and
Oh,
you can mark that
write that
and
down.
solidify it. One, by bylaws, I can't,
Okay.
right?
Not
Two,
like you did something to.
right,
You're banned
exactly.
from ever
So
being president.
one, I cannot by bylaws, and two, I provided the association with 6 years of service as a board member, and then 7 years of service between the executive committee for the association and the executive committee for their services corporation. And so I've done my time, and
Like
I
a
don't,
term limit.
right. I do not wish to be a repeat offender. Right. So I will, I promise you I will never do that
Okay.
again.
Well, so then you're always the first
Yeah,
non-owner.
right. Which was a cool thing. Not, at the time I didn't make a big deal out of it, but I, have a tendency to bring it up more today than I did, 10 years ago, 11 years ago.
I think that's awesome.
And probably the other thing that I should make you aware, I do have a unique hobby, if you want to call it that. So I'm very active in emergency management, mass fatality response.
Oh,
So
wow.
I am commander of MIMORT, the Michigan Mortuary Operations Response Team, and I am a member of the National Disaster Medical System, DMORT, Disaster Mortuary Operations Response Team, Team VIC, or Victim Information Center, and where I am a family advocate. And so, emergency response is kind of a hobby of mine.
You are very well immersed in this field. My goodness. And so you have a mortuary science degree,
Yes, ma'am.
certification degree.
Yes, ma'am.
So you've actually done the body work
Yeah, and so
aftercare.
right, so in the state of Michigan, funeral directors and embalmers it's a single license. You have to do both. There's not, right? There are some states where it's funeral director or embalmer, and some of those states also have a combined funeral director and embalmer. So they would say, I am a licensed funeral director and embalmer. In the state of Michigan, only a licensed funeral director can be an embalmer. So yes, I have our firm, we serve, 500 families on an annual basis, right? I have embalmed thousands of people over.
Oh my goodness.
I'm also a nationally certified crematory operator, and we have a cremation center in Toledo, Ohio called Quality Funeral Choices. And I will tell you that, since 1995, I've probably cremated thousands of people.
Well, I mean, it's a necessary service.
Hmm.
So thank you for that.
It's an honor and privilege to be able to help. For many of us in funeral service, we believe funeral service is a calling for us, and we've got into funeral service because we have a passion to help others. And what an amazing opportunity to be able to help people during one of the most difficult times in their life. It's an amazing career. It really is.
Talking to you, Tim, just it gives me so much hope for your area. I know when my mom passed away, I felt like the funeral home were like cold, money
Hmm.
hungry
Sure.
shysters.
I get you.
And that just was such a hard experience for me that I had this thought that y'all were it was the same
Mhm.
around everywhere. And so I'm glad to be able to speak with you and hear it is not like that. That was just maybe a special situation,
So,
special for me.
one, I'm sorry for your loss. Any loss, right? But losing a parent, incredibly difficult. Two, on behalf of thousands of funeral service professionals who I personally know from around the country, I offer you our apology for the experience that you may have had. Because I will tell you, again, I know funeral directors not only across the state of Michigan, but across the country. And that is not the experience that they provide for the families that they care for, the decedents that they care for. It's not the way they operate. So,
Yeah. Well,
but
thanks.
just like any other business, right? I mean, there's great teachers and there's so-so teachers. There's great attorneys and there are attorneys that should have chosen a different profession, right? I mean, you could say that about any profession, right?
Right.
And it does happen. And, it's not the way that I think it should be. And it certainly wasn't the way you thought it should be.
Yeah. I mean, thank you for that. It was not necessary, but I appreciate that. And I'm glad to know that it's not everywhere.
Hmm.
So, but we are talking about green practices. Yeah. So, all right. So before we talked, or before I learned a lot, I knew there was burial, and I knew that there was cremation. And then when I talked to Melissa Meadows, oh my gosh, what is the Modern Mortician? That's her Instagram handle. She told me about green burial, which I had heard the phrase. I told you that I had
Hmm.
heard the phrase. I didn't really know what it meant. And so she talked about a few different options, because there's like a water cremation,
Hmm.
and it's been too long. Oh my gosh. So the natural organic reduction, I'm sure
Hmm.
she talked about that. And then there's something else, and I forget. And I know we talked about like burial at sea, and we talked
Sure.
about, yeah, I forget anything else. But so I appreciate so much that this is a funeral home's view of this, and like you're telling us what is, at least in Michigan where you are,
Hmm. Yep.
the options that are available, because you had said that there are so many like regulations and rules and stuff like that. And so from state to state, it's going to be different. But
Correct.
so we're speaking about Michigan right now. So what are the options? Because I know you had said also shades of green. So this is like,
Yeah. So let's go back and just, hit on a couple of other things that you said, and we'll move into the green piece, right? So, one, alkaline hydrolysis, that's cremation by water, right? Or mesoresumation, as it is
I
also
love that
known.
there are several names for everything.
Yeah, right. But that's really water, chemical, heat, and pressure, right? For that cremation process. There's flame-based cremation, which is, probably what most people are familiar with or have heard of, right? Alkaline hydrolysis, to the best of my knowledge, is legal in less than half of all the states in the United States. It's
Believe that.
teetering right on that edge. Natural organic reduction, or human composting, as it is really. So human composting earth, wood chips, microbes to decompose the body into a mixture of all of those things and potentially return to the family. And then green burial. So the first thing that I would say is that green burial, to the best of my knowledge, is legal in across the United States. But again, every state, you know, local or county ordinance are going to apply. So, could be, what's here in Michigan could be a little bit different than what's in Wisconsin, right? That type of thing. Just like, funeral home regulation, cemetery regulation are, there's going to be differences from state to state. right? There are some federal compliance things, but as far as state rules and, laws, rules, and regulations, there'll be some variances from state to state. So green burial really, it's not a new idea, right? It's nearly how all Homo sapiens have cared for their dead prior to the Civil War. So if we can go all the way back to the Neanderthal, where they gathered their dead together in single caves, ancient Egyptians, right? Or literally with mummification, practicing, in essence, the disinfection and preservation of human remains, which is the same thing that embalming is doing. But, when we think of the United States and we go back to our forefathers, we were primarily a rural society. We were self-sustained. We were farmers. We were hunters. We were gatherers. And when they experienced a death, it was the family who cared for the dead, bathing, dressing, placing in some sort of container, whether it was a wood box, whether it was a coffin, oftentimes having viewings or gatherings at the home. I'm old enough to remember, my grandma and grandpa's house had a parlor, right? Was one of the rooms. We're going to go into the parlor now, right? Well, right. That's where the term funeral parlor came from, because that's that room, that parlor, that's where ultimately they held those viewings and gatherings of the dead. And then, they buried maybe on their own land, right? Where farmers started their own small family cemetery, or the community may have created some sort of communal burial ground where they buried, everybody in, let's say a surrounding area of some kind of geographic scope. And, bodies were returned to the earth. And then it was really the Civil War where modern embalming practices began to disinfect and preserve the remains of soldiers killed on the battlefield so that they could be brought back home for their family to be able to see, be able to have a funeral, and to be buried. Green practices, when we talk about green burial, so you have the Green Burial Council that's been around for about 20 years. We are a Green Burial Council certified funeral home and have one of the first in Michigan. I don't want to say we were the first, but we're one of the first in Michigan that were GBC. And that just, realistically, that means that we have to stock green chemicals, which basically are alcohol-based versus formaldehyde. Again, yeah. Yeah, so basically alcohol-based, which again, alcohol is going to dissipate as it is exposed to air, but again, allows for the disinfection and temporary preservation of the remains, that we have green burial on our required by the Federal Trade Commission general price list, and that we offer that we have green containers that would be acceptable at a green cemetery. For us here, our closest green burial cemetery is about an hour and a half, depending on traffic, maybe 2 hours away.
Sure.
And it's a beautiful place. It's called The Pasture. And just as its name reflects, you pull into a gravel parking lot and you are overlooking a beautiful pasture, right? But it is different than cemeteries that most people are used to going, right? With paved roads, with maintained grounds, with cemetery markers, monuments, headstones, whatever it may be. This is a parking lot in which you would have to go walk into a field. The grass isn't cut, the snow's not plowed, there's no cemetery markers, They may allow in certain areas the planting of a tree or the placing of a boulder or a stone as, that marker.
Mhm.
But what most people are used to, right, is that kind of flat, grass cut, snow plowed, cemetery
Grid.
markers.
It's
I
like a
can, right?
grid. Yeah.
Yep, where I can drive in. So, what we see and what we are very fortunate, I think, right? One, we have this beautiful green burial cemetery that's, not that far away, quite frankly, and it's a beautiful environment, and it's run by a cemetery group that they have more traditional cemeteries too. This is just one of their properties, and they do a tremendous job. But what we are very fortunate with is that a number of our local cemeteries have what they refer to as a green section. And so, that's where I talk about the shades of green in the fact that it may not be necessarily Green Burial Council certified, right? But they're doing some a semblance of green. So, one, we have some smaller, what I refer to as hill cemeteries, that actually we can do a burial with a wood container without embalming, and they don't require an outer burial container. And we're not buried at a Green Burial Council certified cemetery, but it is a green burial. And we've been doing those burials my entire 38 years that I've been here, and they were
Mhm.
done certainly before. And quite frankly, that's how Elba Howe started Howe and Son Funeral Directors in 1873, was doing those same type of things, right? There really wasn't the modern embalming practice hadn't been promoted everywhere yet.
Okay.
You know, two, again, for me, that shade of green, it's also about families being eco-friendly, right? And to me, those are more of the client families that we serve on a regular basis. And so
Mhm.
what does that mean? Well, maybe we do green embalming, maybe we do a traditional embalming. We use a wood casket. And so we have solid plank wood caskets that use approximately 33% of a tree in order to manufacture that casket. And so, 67% of that tree goes to waste, right? We
Right.
use engineered wood, which uses 97 to 98% of the tree,
Okay.
right? Where it's ground, it's mixed with a resin, and it's poured into a form. And so families like the idea that less trees are being used.
Mhm.
Um, Two, the casket manufacturer that we use actually, for every family that purchases one of their products, they make a donation to the United States Forestry Service in memory of the deceased name, so that the United States Forestry Service can repopulate forests that have been decimated by wildfires or some sort of natural disaster, right? So families really, love that.
Right.
We offer eco-friendly urns, whether they're biodegradable or water degradable, because some people want to place we're in the Great Lakes state, right? Some people want to place cremated remains in a lake. And so there's, water degradable urns that we offer. We have paper, scattering tubes for families that are looking to scatter cremated remains. And then we offer, for memorial stationery, we offer recycled paper products. And so, those are the things that at least we here at Howe-Peterson find more often than not. Is it's not necessarily about that true green burial. It's They're looking to be eco-friendly,
Mhm.
is how I see it.
Okay.
And the different shades of green are so immense
Sure.
for, what are client families' wants and needs. My job as a funeral service professional, my responsibility is inform, educate, and empower consumers to make decisions that are best for themselves.
And so, I mean, it sounds like, what's important, being mindful about what's important for the client
Hmm.
or clients, depending, the family or the person that has
Sure.
passed,
Right.
what would
We're
be important to
caring for
them.
that person who has passed, and we are providing a service to that client family.
So if they are more concerned about the vessel that they're placed in or the way that they're cared for or where they're put,
Hmm.
that's really, I like that. I like that. It's like an a la carte sort of, you can have this and you don't have to have all of it. It's not all or nothing, I guess.
Correct. Right. And again, it's like that regardless of the type of disposition that you wish to have, right? It's final disposition is just final disposition, right? With just about any form of final disposition outside of anatomical donation, we can pretty much do whatever the family would like to do, again, within the rules or regulations that guide us here in the state of Michigan.
Okay. That's that's fascinating. I would love to go to the pasture or
Hmm.
someplace like, a green burial certified place of burial just to see. Like I feel like it would be very very intimate, a very intimate feeling, like just knowing that there are bodies there and
Hmm.
also a little bit weird because you said the ground is a little bit squishy. It's bumpy because it's not you don't have the concrete box
Hmm.
that they're in,
Yep.
but also just the fact that there aren't any like super showy granite
Yeah,
headstones. It's very natural and very peaceful. And that seems like a really nice place to rest.
it does.
And I oh gosh, I had a thought about that and I don't have it now. But I think that sounds like a really beautiful thing. And I'm curious is there like a percentage of people that choose that type of burial or is it
Right. So I think one, that's a great question. I could not tell you what the specific percentage is here in the state of Michigan
sure?
because it's not a statistic that is tracked, because technically the form of final disposition is burial.
Hmm.
Right? The state of Michigan doesn't, let's say, discriminate against a a modern burial cemetery versus a green burial, right? The death
Burial's
certificate
burial.
is just going to say burial, right?
Got
In
it.
in the state of Michigan, right, it's going to say burial, cremation, anatomic donation,
Okay.
right? And that's really their accepted forms of final disposition. Now, what I can tell you is based upon the National Funeral Directors Association consumer awareness and preference study is that 68% of consumers are interested in some sort of green or eco-friendly memorialization, if that helps.
Right. Okay. Shades of
So
green.
yeah, right, and
Okay.
again, that's, what
That's
I was
great.
saying, right, that that's what I see more of in, that I have seen in my career is that type of thing, right, shades of green.
Right. I think that's actually that's really great that because I mean, of course you said it's been green burial for forever,
Centuries.
but now it feels like at least in my experience, like the options were not that.
Mhm,
And so I think there are probably a lot of places that is the only option and so or they're not made aware of the green burial option and so it's probably in some areas it's less and in some
mhm,
areas it's more, but
absolutely.
I like that people care enough to ask about that and be interested at least.
Mhm.
And I thought about my other question about
Sure.
the green burial site. Are there, I was kind of joking about this, but when you go to a normal cemetery, there's like a map. Like you go into this entrance and you go up four sections or whatever, and it's on the right. Is there something like that for the green burial area? So they're planted underneath the sycamore tree, or they're planted, over by the gully or something like that.
Yeah, so the cemetery is required to, document, right? So they have the property is mapped out,
Because they need to
right?
know where to put a new person.
Exactly,
Yeah,
right? And now, do they have a map that, just that they could provide a consumer?
right.
Not that I have seen, right? But I do know what they do is they point out landmarks,
Got it.
right? If you see, right, if you go to the northwest edge of the parking lot and you'll see three trees that go across the whole property, right? It's in between the first and second tree that you see, and it's going to be on the south side, before you get to, if you see that boulder over there, that type of thing.
And is it smelly?
No,
I mean,
no,
I know that
no, 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 no.
they're in wooden boxes, but like,
Well, could be a wood box, could be a wicker casket, could
yeah,
be a cloth shroud, right? But so again, generally speaking, right? You hear, right? Being put 6 feet under. Okay, so normal grave that concrete or steel outer burial container is going to be placed in is about 6 feet,
okay,
right? So, are they burying at, 5 to 6 feet? I would say yes, right? So no, there is not an odor of decomposition. But, again, no different than because again, people are going to go, I get it, right? So on my wife and I, we live in an old farmhouse and it's a detached garage and, any dead squirrel or dead bird that has turned up in our yard. Certainly for my kids, goldfish. We had a turtle for nearly 20 years, right?
my
Well, we
goodness,
have we we have a little enclosure on the side of my garage that, we have buried all of those animals in, and oftentimes, right? I'm a funeral director,
right?
right? My kid's goldfish dies, right? Daddy, can we have a funeral? Right. And so we've done that. But you're not smelling that decomposition. And I'm certainly not burying, whether it's a dead rabbit or a dead squirrel 6 feet under, right? And a couple of shovelfuls, get them down in there, right? And place the dirt back up over the top.
Okay.
So nothing like that at all. I have never been to an NOR facility, the natural organic reduction, so I do not know, is there the smell of decomposition?
Uh-huh.
You've probably, and again, probably because this is the things I know, so maybe you haven't, but you've probably heard of the Body Farm in Tennessee.
Have I? No.
Well, how about that? Well, there's a subject for you to explore,
Note to
right?
self.
Right. And so what they are doing is they are literally documenting the decomposition of human remains in different environmental places for forensic study. So, as an example, a decedent in the back of a sedan in 100-degree weather, right? What does that decomposition look like in 24 hours, 48 hours, 7, yada, 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 going on, where they're verbally and, photographically documenting so that forensic scientists, right, that gives them a map of, right, here's how where the remains were found, and this was the condition that they were in, right?
Mhm.
They can start making educated guesses on how long has this decedent been present, right? So I've never been there, always wanted to go there, but I have been to Northern Michigan University in Marquette, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, has the Frost program. And again, same type thing. But because of the winters that they have up there, the
Right.
cold temperatures, the snow, right, documenting the decomposition in those environments. And hey, Kitty, but what I will tell you is if you go to, I've been to the Frost, you're walking around there, you're not smelling decomposition, right?
Hmm.
Until maybe they open a trunk or open a barrel or something like that where decomposition's been happening.
Okay. Can I ask another question about the green burial site? I know that with regular burial, bodies are like kept cold. I mean, the embalmment process, but then if in the winter, like you can't just dig up the ground,
Depending on,
depending on the
right?
ground, but like
Mhm.
if with a regular burial, I could be completely wrong, but do they keep the body cold? Am I thinking of like a murder story?
Your television, right? What you've
Yeah,
seen in television and
exactly.
film, right?
Like, do they keep the body
Decedents in
cold
coolers,
until?
right? You're thinking of
Yeah,
decedents in coolers, whether it's a walk-in cooler or many police
drawers.
shows, right? They have drawers
Exactly.
that they're pulling out at the
Is it not like
medical
that?
examiner's office, depending on where you're at, right? So funeral homes, so again, state to state,
Yep.
right? What are going to be requirements? So in the state of Michigan, we are either within 48 hours of death, we are either embalming or we are refrigerating.
Okay.
So that's the premise in the state of Michigan.
So then for the green burial, then they are refrigerated in the winter.
No, because again, we could use green chemical, which
The
is
alcohol.
basically just right alcohol based. It's non-formaldehyde. So again, they've been embalmed and that refrigeration is not necessary. Not to say that, okay, there's going to be, families are so extended
Right.
today that it's going to be 2 weeks before the visitation or funeral. Might we use refrigeration also? Certainly, but not required.
Okay. Okay. Fascinating. Oh my goodness.
When to get back, right, the other piece, right, earth burial, right, in, cold temperature, high snow, right, that type of. So what you're speaking of in funeral service, we call winter burials, and that is the cemetery either does not or is unable to dig graves in the wintertime.
Right.
And so what ends up happening is then, at least here in northern Michigan, maybe mid-April, might be beginning of May, when they start to do all of their winter burials where all of the decedents are coming. So one, those decedents, again, have been embalmed or they're being refrigerated. And two, many funeral homes have holding areas or holding rooms for decedents that are impacted, families that are impacted by winter burials, and a number of those cemeteries offer storage facilities for those remains waiting for the burial to take place in spring. And based upon Maine's geography, I don't know factually, but I would just have to guess, right, that there's got to be places in Maine where they do not bury in the wintertime and they do spring burials. But I don't know it
Yeah.
factually.
I don't know that factually either. But I mean, I would assume, if there's feet of snow,
Yeah,
right, not be
well,
able to.
again, here in southeast Michigan, we could have feet of snow,
Right.
is the burial delayed maybe by a day or two? Sure, that happens. But generally speaking,
They still happen in the winter.
it snowed last night. We're going there today. Because again, the cemeteries are using heavy equipment, heavy machinery, and that, and in order to maintain their grounds, to
Right.
allow us to be able to do that. Again, have we been delayed by a day or two? Sure. But, just kind of generally speaking, we're going today if it snowed last night.
Wow. Okay. I'm like, I have to look up the body farm now. And you said the other one is the Frost?
FROST program. Yep. FROST. And I know it's an acronym for what it stands for, but it's an amazing program. It really is.
Interesting.
And we've actually, so I was telling you, right, that I do mass fatality response. So we actually did the first cold weather mass fatality response exercise at Northern Michigan University using some of the remains from the FROST program, in which we set up tents in a parking lot in order to operate all of our morgue operations because we were wanting to test what's the impact on our people, what's the impact on our instrumentation. Can we keep it warm enough for them to be able to operate? Can we, will our computers and photography and x-ray machines, both dental and radiology, function, right? All of those types of things. And so that was April of last year, in which our travel day up, they had a blizzard with 24 inches of snow and 60-mile-an-hour sustained winds.
Oh my gosh.
So, to say the least, we got started a little late.
Yeah.
But, again, that's
Anything
part of
would.
my,
Yeah.
right? That's part of my familiarity with the program.
Okay. This is absolutely fascinating to me. I feel like maybe I missed my calling. I don't know. But
It's never too late. Right?
I,
Many,
maybe
many,
not. I don't
I will
know.
tell you one, right? We're about 75% of all students in accredited mortuary science programs are women. And it's a very popular second career. You would not believe how many students there are, let's say 35 to 55, who are exploring a second career in funeral service.
Did you say 75% are women?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
I mean, even
wicked cool.
when I was in school, wasn't quite 50%, but, very much, 75% nowadays. And again, right, who's naturally empathetic, kind, and caring?
Hmm.
But, right, women, right, versus, crass, cold, old men like me.
I would not call you any of those things, Tim. Okay, I I might just.
And there are online mortuary science programs where you can do it from the comfort of your computer where you're sitting right now. Probably, I think 3 times during the course of the year, you'd have to go to campus for 2 weeks to get all your lab work done. But otherwise, you do the entire rest of the program,
Hmm,
online.
okay. I have a couple of maybe, I mean, they're not necessarily related, but I'm curious. I mean, you've been doing this for so long and you've done all the things, I assume. What is your favorite part?
The people I meet, right? The families we serve, the relationships, the personal connections and relationships that you make, right? My wife and I'll be, we'll be walking through the grocery store and I'll have somebody come walking up going, "Oh, Tim, I
And your
know I
wife is
served
just
them."
used to it by now.
Yeah,
With
well, but it's not only that, right? It's sometimes, right? I mean, it may have been 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago, right? I just don't, you know, I may not remember who they are, but it's an amazing thing. Families coming back, over and over again and asking for you specifically because, you cared for dad when he died. They want you to care for mom. That's the most amazing opportunity in the world. Two, I believe and again, it's my personal belief, not anybody, not anybody else's. I believe as a funeral director, we are providing a sacred act in caring for the dead. One goes all the way back to the Neanderthal. Two, I still always look at Joseph of Arimathea. Joseph asked Pontius Pilate for Christ's body off of the cross, right? Wrapped him in linen and spice and placed him in the tomb. And for me, that is a sacred act, right? In caring for the dead. That's the way that I view it, is in caring for the dead. One, we have people's most prized possession at that moment. That's somebody's husband, somebody's wife, somebody's mother, somebody's father, God forbid, somebody's child, right? And that's the most precious thing they could give us, right? They deserve to be treated with the utmost care, kindness, and compassion. And certainly when there's maybe been a traumatic event involved and the family doesn't believe we could have an open casket, and I just say, please just let us do what we do. And if we believe everything will be acceptable, you can designate who you want, have them come to the funeral home. We'll have them dressed, cosmetized, casketed, placed in one of our event spaces, and they can make the determination, do we leave the casket open or closed? We have many families that will say, well, we'll have the casket open when we come in, but before the public, we're going to close the casket. And they come in and they can't believe, right, how we've given them mom or dad back. We've given them their husband or wife. That's amazing. It really, I mean, the personal satisfaction of making that happen is priceless. It really is.
And that's why you still do it.
Amen.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh. My other question is not nearly as personal, but I'm just curious what a day in the life is like for you as the
So
CEO.
yeah, well, I mean, one, there's two answers to that question, right? So one, what's the day in the life of a funeral director like, right? That's one part of your question. And what I would say to you is this, is that every day is different. Every family is different. Every decedent is different, right? You could have been, you know, I could have been on call last night and talked to, been woken up 4 different times to talk to 4 different families. We could have had, one or two, 5 or 7 funerals today, or we could have had none, right? That's every day is different. We could have done, no cremations today. We could have sadly done the cremation of 2 infants today, which we did. Right? Exactly. We could have done, 2 adult cremations today. So every day is different, right? Every family is different, every circumstance is different. Every funeral is different. Again, I'll go back to the 90s, and funerals were very cookie cutter. You know, It was right. There were ministers where we could stand outside of the room and we could lip sync the service. Insert name, change pronoun here.
Yep.
It's not like that anymore, and I think that's a wonderful thing. The opportunity that we have to tell the story of this unique life that's been lived. So, every day is different for a funeral service professional. As the CEO, right, I'm operating a business, just like somebody is operating the business of a medical practice, the business of a law practice. Friends of mine that is a plumber, right? He's still running a business. The business is just plumbing. A friend of mine that has a carpet cleaning business, he right? He cleans carpet for a living, but he's running a carpet cleaning business, right? I am very much a business administrator and, realistically, since 2005, more of a business administrator than a funeral director, but still have the opportunity to, you know, see families, meet families, hear their stories, get to know families, get to know the lives of decedents. And, again, it's an amazing opportunity to be in funeral service. And, you know, as the CEO, our organization is large enough, right, that you need that chief executive officer who is responsible for managing all of the managers, right? We have
Right.
a financial manager, we have a pre-need administrator, we have licensed funeral directors that are location managers of, three of our funeral home locations. We have a registered and certified crematory operator who's managing the operation of our crematory operations, right? It's my job to, manage all of them.
Right.
In the end, though, still caring for decedents and still serving families.
That's awesome. I mean, the more I listen to you, Tim, I'm just like, after 38 years, the fact that it still touches you like it
It does.
does, and it's just as important as, or maybe even more so, that so long in.
I can't, the more so piece would be more about the future for our current funeral service professionals, right? And who's going to be next in my position. But, again, over the years, right, have had people say to me, I don't know how you can do this. And I say, it's very simple. If I ever am directing a funeral and I don't shed a tear, I'm done because I have not truly empathetically connected with that family's situation, right? If it's a funeral at the funeral home, if it's a funeral at church, if it's just a private family identification where we are doing a ceremony or an urn receiving ceremony or a graveside service at a green burial cemetery, right? If if that ceremony doesn't bring a tear to my eye, I haven't emotionally connected with the family in their situation. And then I'm done, right? Because if I can't relate to a family who their father has died, right? My father died 21 years ago. If I cannot connect with that, I'm done,
Right.
right? Unfortunately, my wife and I had a baby that died, right? If I can't connect with that family who's experienced the same thing, I'm done.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry about that.
It's, people always ask me, when am I going to get over this? Right? My dad died 21 years ago. I'm not over it. It still hurts sometimes when I think about him. I don't know how long ago your mom passed away, right? But I'm sure for you, right? First of all, the first year, all of those first, right? Anniversaries, birthdays, holidays,
Yep.
right? Special times, that meal that you cook, that smell, right? That smell brings back a memory, and all of a sudden there's a tear rolling down your face.
Yep.
Right. I tell people over and over again, healthy grief, you're laughing and crying at the same time. That's healthy,
Yep.
right? Because if you're not doing either one of those, that's what's not healthy,
Yeah.
right? You don't get over it. You learn how to live a life after a loss, but your life has been changed forever,
Right.
right? So the death of our baby, right? It was a life event that changed my wife and I's life forever,
For sure.
right? And so you never get over that though, right? I mean, again, my dad, certainly more happy memories, smile to my face,
Of course.
maybe laugh,
You had
you know,
memories.
right. And I mean, sometimes I'll say something and I'll be like, my dad's in the room, right? I'll be looking around for him. But there are still times where I talk to my dad and I shed a tear because I still love him and I still miss him.
Okay, next question, and this is my last one.
Okay.
Just for curiosity, how old are your kids? And are any of them expressing any interest in taking this
No.
over?
Yeah. So
They're like, "Dad, you're crazy."
sure. My oldest actually told me, I don't want to work like you do. So, no, my oldest, my son Joshua, is 41 years old. He's an MSW, he's a Master of Social Work. And so he has spent a career working with developmentally disabled adults
Okay.
in ensuring they're getting the care and benefits and all those types of things that they should be getting. He has recently moved into managing other social workers, so he's not doing so much client care now as he is managing people, which is quite frankly no different than what I do. But not in funeral service, right? He can wear shorts and his Converse cons and a cartoon t-shirt and a baseball hat and go to work, right? I'm the one that here it is, 6 o'clock. I'm sitting to you and with a tie, 2 of 3 pieces of a suit on, right? That kind of
Right.
stuff. So he's 41. My youngest, my daughter Sophie, is 33 and works in cybersecurity.
Yeah.
And the thing that she loves about it most is that her commute to work most days is from her bedroom to her kitchen,
Yeah.
and she's at work.
Yeah.
So she loves that. So nope. And again, funeral service is not for everyone.
Yeah.
And I would, again, this is why a lot of families, right, why there ends up being in any small family business, why there ends up being dysfunction in families of, you have to go in to do whatever it is, right?
Right.
Maybe it's an attorney, maybe it's a barber, maybe it's a plumber like my friend, right?
Right.
I always told them I want them to be happy, healthy, productive citizens, right? That's the only thing I've ever asked of them.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I was just curious because like the Petersons had three
Mhm.
generations, and
Yep,
it seems to me something that would, I don't know, might be passed down through generations if
certainly.
the children are like used to that
Mhm.
routine, and but I also I've heard on another podcast that you get woken up in the middle of the night all the time, and you just have to be on and get to it,
24/7,
and
365 nights, weekends, holidays. You're going to
yeah,
miss birthdays, family functions. You're going to miss
vacation.
Christmas, right? You're going to go on vacation and get that call and have to leave and go back.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. I have done that for years. And so,
And you're still married.
well, hey, that part I just got lucky on,
Your wife
right?
is a saint.
She right to put up with me and we will be celebrating 36 years in eight days, right? 36 years in 8 days. One, wouldn't be who I am today without my wife Cheryl. Two, couldn't imagine life having been any different than being with my wife Cheryl. Love her to death. She's been my biggest cheerleader, my biggest encourager. I always tell her, right, she's my chief support officer.
Is she on your payroll?
Sure she is. I bring a check home, I put it in the bank, and right, she spends it how she sees fit, and I don't say a word. Right? Uh, you know, she is, she's my daily debriefer,
Yeah.
especially when I'm on a mass fatality incident, right? She's the person that I can,
Yeah.
you know, express my anger, express my frustration, cry my eyes out. just sit with on the phone. I was on one deployment for 14 days, and just to sit on the phone with her and not talk about what we were doing. So
Yeah.
it was the Maui wildfire response
Hmm.
in Lahaina, in which both we had been to before, and just to sit on the phone with her and have me tell me about her day, and me not have
Anything
to
else?
talk about,
Yeah.
right, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
She is a saint, right, because she has put up with an awful lot from me
Well, like you
in
said, I
what I've
mean,
done.
being working in the funeral service is not
Hmm.
for everyone.
Yep.
Being married to someone who's in the funeral service is also not for everyone. I'm very
Amen.
sure.
Yep. Amen. Absolutely.
Yeah. Whew. Wow. Okay. To be as respectful of your time as I can, what does the word sustainability mean to you, Tim?
Sustainability, how does it continue on, right? Whether you're talking about the earth, whether you're talking about a family, whether you're talking about a business, right? What is sustainability is how, right? How is something carried on,
Hmm.
right? How can we leave this earth better than where we are today? That's sustainability, right? How can we leave our family better when we leave this earth,
Hmm.
right? That's sustainability. How can I leave Howe-Peterson in a better place before I leave this earth is sustainability.
I might also even just add on, I don't think it's morbid to think about it ahead of time and maybe let someone know what you're thinking. Yeah. Like we don't want to think about it, but at the same time, like laying all that on someone is it's a lot because it's on top of grief. This is on top of grief. Oh my gosh. Tim, thank you so much.